Hello and welcome to our first part on Krashen's theory of second language acquisition. So he has 5 different hypotheses within this one theory. The first one is language acquisition versus language learning. This is kind of the baseline where he sets himself up for every other hypothesis within this theory. For him, it's incredibly important that you distinguish between what is language acquisition as well as what is language learning. So today we're going to look at that difference, understand it a little better, and then figure out for every one of these hypotheses, how can we use this in our language learning venture? So let's jump right in here. First thing we have to define what the difference is. Now, language acquisition is, I have here, indirect goalless communication. A good time to think about is when you're a newborn, right? And you're learning a language, and the goal is just to understand, right? I am thirsty, water, I am hungry, food, right? The goal there is not to learn the language. The goal is indirectly to pick up the language just so you can communicate. So the language is being used here as our means of communication instead of language learning. So with language learning, it's much more direct. Right? Our goal is, in fact, to learn the language. That is doing grammar tables at school. That is memorizing vocabulary, right? The action of learning a language is language learning. The action of doing other things, but then picking up the language because you need them to communicate, is language acquisition, all right? Understanding this difference, incredibly important for us as language learners. So now, the bread and butter. How do we apply this? So understanding that there is a difference between language acquisition and language learning is essential, because a lot of times when we're learning a new language, we get stuck in this kind of routine of doing grammar tables, memorizing words, right? When we forget the main reason why we're learning a language is to communicate, is to use that language. So when it comes to learning a language, how can we best utilize understanding this difference? It's a good kind of reminding point that, yes, we do need to learn it. That's important. However, we also need to allow ourselves time to acquire the language, whether that be through watching TV, reading books, listening to podcasts, right? Enjoyment can be the reason why we're doing something, and then communication as to how we're going to do it, right? That's language acquisition. So don't forget, that's a really important part of language learning that a lot of people overlook, especially when they're early on in the process of learning a language. And then also there is the side of learning. Sit down, get your grammar tables done, understand basic conjugation and syntax and how adverbs and adjectives work. All right, so that is, like I said, the first hypothesis, in Krashen's 5 parts theory on second language acquisition. Thanks for coming out. Tune in now to our next video where we dive into the natural order hypothesis.